Chapter 72, Summer 1975. Selected letters between the marauders. Dear Moony, I'm pretty sure I can get away with writing letters at least for now. I can imagine they're being read, but I don't give a shit. Do you hear me, Regulus? Dreadful so far. Looks like Mum tried to take down my Gryffindor stuff while I was away, but I put it back up with permanent sticking charms. I'm going to see if there's anything else I can put up to piss her off. There's a big family meeting next week. Posh dinner, dress robes, best behaviour, etc., etc. James thinks I should keep my head down and just make note of who attends and what gets said in case it's useful later. I don't know, sort of want to set some dung bombs off instead. What would you do? Sirius.
Sirius. Getting on with Reg then? Go easy on him. You don't have anyone else on your side. Please be careful. I don't know what I'd do. I've never been to a posh dinner. Probably make a twat of myself. Don't do anything stupid, okay? James is usually right. Remus.
Dear Remus, can't believe I have to spend the whole summer without any of you. Sometimes I really hate being an only child. I bet you're never lonely at St. Edmund's. Sirius seems okay. He checks in pretty often. I think he's bored. If boredom is the worst of it, then that's a good thing, right? I keep trying to convince him not to make a fuss. We don't know what sort of thing the Blacks are involved in. Could be nothing at all. Hope your summer is off to a good start. Have you looked at homework? That charms essay looks like a right ball ache.
James. James, he'd be fine if he could control himself, but I doubt it. Keep talking to him. Remind him he's got to get back to Hogwarts in one piece. Summer is fine. You're right. I don't ever get lonely. I wouldn't mind a bit of privacy most of the time, but this summer's been good. Don't worry about me. That charms essay is a doddle, and you know it. You just don't like hard work, Potter. Remus.
Moony, greetings from San Francisco. I thought it would be hot here, but it's bloody freezing and rains most of the time. Merlin knows why Philomena would want to live here. It's no different than dear old Blighty.
Pete.
Dear Moony, caused uproar this week. It was brilliant. Found a bunch of old Muggle posters in a skip down the road. Pictures of girls, you know the sort. They don't even move. It's hilarious. Anyway, stuck them up on the walls with my patented sticking charm. And Mum is furious. I think she's probably only annoyed because they're Muggle girls. She couldn't care less that they've got their tits out. Anyway, now I can't go unsupervised. Worth it though. Sirius.
Sirius. You're an idiot and you know it. Posters? Don't you feel weird with them all staring at you? Remus.
Dear Remus, really worried about Sirius. I don't know if he told you about the stunt he pulled with the posters, but he's a bloody idiot for doing it. Don't believe him if he says he's fine. He'd definitely been crying when I spoke to him last in the mirror. Don't tell him I told you that, obviously. Stand by in case we need to trigger the rescue mission. James.
James. Ready when you are. Remus.
Moony, don't listen to Potter. He's an old woman. Everything's fine. Nothing I can't cope with. Hope you're having a good summer. Can't wait for September. Sirius. Friday, the 22nd of August, 1975. Remus staggered weakly into the dorm room. It had been a bad one. Madame Pomfrey thought it must be because of the change of scenery. He had a long, thick scar across his chest now. It had been ages since he'd got a scar. Grant sat up abruptly, looking hurt. Where you been? He asked. Thought you got arrested or something.
Sick, Remus replied.
Sick with what?
Remus sighed, flopping down on his bed. It had been a hard night, and he just wanted to sleep. He closed his eyes. He didn't feel like excuses today. Well, it was the full moon last night, you see, he said calmly. When I was 5, I was bitten by a werewolf, and now I am one. I turn every month, and Matron locks me up so I don't hurt anyone else.
Oh, ha ha, Grant replied, climbing onto Remus's bed, straddling him.
They were both so skinny they fit easily together on the narrow bunk. Very funny, clever clogs. Fine. Don't tell me. He leaned forward and kissed Remus. Remus opened his eyes, freezing for a moment. It's fine, Grant assured him, stroking his cheek. They're all outside, I checked. Remus kissed him back. It had been a strange sort of summer, but one of the most pleasant Remus had ever had. He hadn't been lonely for once, hadn't counted down the days until the 1st of September. In the beginning, he and Grant had bonded over David Bowie, T-Rex and Neil Young, even Deep Purple, who Grant was crazy about, and Remus thought Sirius would probably like. They both hated football, and the other boys, so they sloped off together around town, or sat behind the big empty porter cabins, smoking stolen packets of fags. They had been sitting there on the hot gravel one day in mid-July, flicking stones and debating the finer points of Electric Warrior, when suddenly Grant's hand was on Remus's knee, then at his waist, pulling him closer. What are you... It's all right, Grant whispered, desperation edging in his voice, pressing his forehead against Remus's hot cheek. No one's going to find out. He tasted like cigarettes and sunburn. After that, whenever they were alone together, they were snogging. It was sort of a surprise, but mostly not. Remus quickly realised that he had always wanted it, this, or something like it. Like a fog lifting. All things considered, he was grateful to Grant for having taken the initiative. It wasn't what you would call romantic or affectionate, more like a necessary thing. Something Remus knew he had to push as far as it would go so that he could identify all of the hard edges and sharp limits of it. He was mapping out his own desires and using Grant as a compass. His full name was Grant Chapman. He had just turned 16 and he'd been at St. Edmund's since May, though it was by no means his first home. Both of Grant's parents were living, and he even had some extended family, grandparents and aunts and uncles and grown-up cousins, but none of them seemed to want to keep him on for very long. Too much of an handful, Grant would grin cheekily. Everyone gets sick of me in the end. Like most of the boys at St. Edmund's, he did badly at school and had been in trouble with the police a few times on minor offences, though he'd never been officially arrested. He wasn't violent, but he had a mouth on him and a tendency to talk back. But there wasn't a threatening bone in his body. He was so clearly good all over. He had a spectacular smile. It creased his whole face and made you like him at once. One of his canine teeth was a bit wonky, and it was nothing short of endearing. Remus couldn't see why no one wanted him around. He was a bit silly sometimes, a bit immature, but that was okay. Remus knew he could be too serious a lot of the time. Something about Grant's chirpy, happy-go-lucky nature made Remus more confident, comfortable, and Grant just liked Remus so much, really liked him. You're the funniest bloke I've ever met, Grant laughed, when Remus hadn't even said anything that amusing. Mind you, never copped off with anyone from private school before. I'm no different from you, Remus replied, a care-home yob. Piss off, Grant shoved him playfully. You're going places. Anyone can see that. Remus didn't have a response to that, but it made him smile. Grant often made him smile. Besides all of these things, Grant was a really, really good kisser. At least, Remus assumed as much, considering that Grant was the only person he had ever kissed. The first time, he'd felt a wild thrill as he thought to himself, so this is what all the fuss is about. He could snog Grant all day long without coming up for air. Sometimes he found himself compulsively pursing his lips in the night, hot with withdrawal pangs. Remus had expected kissing to be scary and awkward, but, as with so many things, Grant just put him at ease. He made it fun, right from the beginning. No fuss, no questions. If you're only here for the summer, then we might as well enjoy it, yeah? He would say cheerily. Don't worry, I ain't exactly about to propose, sweet as you are. Sweet? Remus scoffed. Sweet, Grant winked, and too bloody good for me by half. Remus hated that kind of talk, and shut him up with another kiss. They had to hide most of the time, of course, from the other boys and from the staff. Remus couldn't imagine what would happen if they were found out.
They'd be separated, definitely, even if they weren't beaten to a pulp. Would Matron tell Dumbledore? Could they expel you for being for kissing other boys? Fortunately, Grant had some experience in covert operations, and they had never come close to being disturbed.
How many times you done this sort of thing?
Remus got up the courage to ask one day. They were behind some disused bike sheds at the local secondary school. Few times, Grant shrugged. Not enough. You?
Never, Remus replied, shocked. I didn't even...
Oh, bless you, Grant laughed lightly, tugging one of Remus's curls. You didn't know? Remus shook his head, his ears growing hot. Grant tutted. Never looked at another bloke for a bit too long. Never get that feeling about a film star or a teacher.
Oh my God,
Remus gasped, images of Ferox crashing down on him. Grant laughed again. And I thought you were all at it, you boarding school lads. Remus just shook his head again in disbelief, wondering if there was anything else he didn't know about himself. As September approached, Remus found himself trying to ignore it. He felt guilty for not having spent the summer worrying about the war, for being distracted by his own selfish urges, especially at a time like this. But at the same time, he felt that he might never have this opportunity again. The other marauders sent letters, as they did every summer. Remus diligently wrote back, not wanting them to worry. He said nothing at all about Grant. He didn't know what to say. Sure that if he put pen to paper, it would all come spilling out, and the other boys would never speak to him again. Or worse, they'd try to understand it without looking him in the eye. That was part of it. On the other hand, Remus just liked the idea of keeping it to himself. The marauders didn't have to know everything about him, and he was allowed to have other friends, wasn't he? Chapter 73, 5th Year, Silver. Monday the 1st of September, 1975. Remus shifted uncomfortably as he waited for a quiet moment to run at the ticket barrier. He was glad Matron hadn't come with him this year, glad to have had the extra time alone to prepare himself. Grant had wanted to come, but Matron said no, and wouldn't give him a fare anyway. They had managed a quick goodbye, locked inside a bathroom at St. Edmund's, one of their many hiding places. Neither of them had said any of the things they'd wanted to say. Actually, they'd hardly spoken at all. But with minutes left, Remus promised he'd try to write. I'm crap at writing, Grant complained. Can't you give me the phone number? It's a really old-fashioned school. We don't get to use the phone much, Remus blagged. He thought there might be a phone box in Hogsmeade, or maybe the next village over, which was non-magical. He could try. Now, as he took aim at the grey ticket barrier and started forward, he had that usual sensation of leaving the Muggle world, and everyone in it, behind for another year. Grant did not exist on this side of the platform. Grant had never happened, and Remus was the same old Remus. Nothing has changed, he told himself. Nothing is different. Matron hadn't insisted he cut his hair this time, so he wasn't beginning the term looking like an oik. He was taller again. He wondered if he'd ever stop growing sometimes. But other than these silly superficial things, everything was as it had been, as it should be. No one would notice, because there was nothing to notice, Remus told himself firmly. Nothing at all. He rubbed the back of his head absent-mindedly. Then, remembering Grant's fingers having been there only a few hours before, wiped his lips self-consciously. Shit. All right, you tosser! Jane slapped him on the back out of nowhere. James, really? Mrs. Potter chastised her son, standing beside him. She beamed up at Remus. Just look at you! You've grown inches! She pulled him into a hug. Still far too skinny for my liking. She began to straighten his clothes, peppering him with questions. Did he have anything to eat for the journey? Had he come alone? Did he want help getting his things aboard? By the end of this motherly assault, Remus was grinning from ear to ear, relaxed in the knowledge that everything was, indeed, fine. Nothing was different at all. He cheerfully boarded the train with James and Peter,
chattering about their summers and their excitement for the year ahead. James had a silver pin on his chest, emblazoned with a large C. Remus could smell it the second James came close, an irritating sting in his nostrils. He had got his dearest wish and was now Quidditch captain. They sat in their usual compartment, and Remus pulled his book from his bag, settling in with a satisfied sigh. Then Sirius walked in, and Remus's stomach dropped through the floor. He was almost the same as ever. Height-wise, he had nearly caught up with James now, and he was broader about the chest. His jaw had squared, and perhaps his nose had lengthened, but he had the same glossy black hair, the same arresting eyes and high cheekbones. He was still Sirius, but was somehow other, as if Remus was seeing him through new eyes. The heat of desire flared up in his chest out of nowhere, settling in his cheeks as a heavy blush. He looked away quickly, before anyone noticed. "Gentlemen?" Sirius nodded graciously, entering the carriage like a prince. "All right," the other two grinned, and Remus mumbled. Sirius sat directly opposite Remus, his hair and uniform purposefully untidy, no doubt for the benefit of Walpurga Black, and flung out his legs, as if he didn't expect them to be as long as they were. His ankle bumped up against Remus's, and Remus shot up suddenly, sitting bolt upright and tucking his own gangly legs neatly under his seat. Sirius gave him a funny look, then a smirking grin, which caused a sharp tug behind Remus's navel. "Oh God," he thought. "No, no, no." "Half expected you not to be here," James said, relieved. "Couldn't have the black heir not turning up for his first day of school." Sirius rolled his dark blue eyes, raising an artful eyebrow. "Couldn't have the whole wizarding world knowing there's strife in my noble family." "How are you?" James asked earnestly. How are you?" "Fine." Sirius nodded, a bit stiffly. "Don't want to talk about it now. Can we just pretend it's a normal first day?" "Yeah, all right, mate." James nodded unconvincingly. "Pete was just telling us about California." "We didn't manage to find Phil," Peter said. "Her housemate said she'd moved on, everywhere we looked. Mum was, she was really upset. It was crap." Remus felt a stab of guilt. It was so long ago now, but he had once told Philomena that she could run away if she wanted. No one says you have to use magic. After his own blissfully simple, magic-free summer, Remus was starting to envy Peter's sister. The train had pulled out of the station, and the grey London buildings were whooshing by, soon to give way to the lush green fields of the home counties. "How was your summer, Moony?" James asked suddenly, and Remus realised Peter had stopped talking some time ago. "Yeah, fine." Remus had practised this in his head on the way to King's Cross, but he hadn't counted on Sirius looking so... It was difficult to focus. "Usual. Nothing exciting. Football, homework. Yeah, fine. Not great, but fine. Not bad, fine." Thankfully, the door to their carriage slid open, putting a stop to his blabbering. Lily Evans stood in the doorway, beaming with delight, her hair a fiery halo. "Evans!" James boomed eagerly. "You found me!" "As if it's hard, Potter." Lily rolled her eyes. "You lot are always in the same car. Anyway, I'm not here for you. I'm here for you." She pointed at Remus, still grinning. "Me?" Remus frowned, confused for a moment. Then it dawned on him. He sighed heavily, wanting to sink into his chair and disappear. The other three marauders and Lily were all staring at him with varying expressions, all expectant. "You got it, didn't you?" Lily said impatiently. "Come on, we have to go to the meeting in the... Merlin!" Sirius suddenly exclaimed, slapping his forehead comically. "How did we forget? Moony, are you a prefect?" James yelled. Remus hung his head. "Yeah." "And you didn't tell us immediately so that we could rip the piss out of you." Sirius's face had lit up, some of the old 11-year-old mischief maker showing through.
You're just jealous, Lily said haughtily. Come on, Remus. Where's your badge? The badge! Sirius burst out laughing. I forgot about the badge. Oh, please, Moony, show us the badge. Peter and James's shoulders were shaking too, and Remus shook his head, trying to look disapproving.
It's in my trunk.
Well, put it on, Lily said. Come on, we have our own carriage and everything. Hey, Evans, I'm Quidditch captain, you know. Yes, Marlene said, Lily said, without so much as glancing in James's direction. Come on, Remus.
Ugh, okay. But the badge is right at the bottom of the trunk. I'll wear it tomorrow,
Remus said, getting up. Oh, no, we can look for it if you want.
Nah, I can't be bothered, Remus shrugged, not looking at her.
Oh, go on, Sirius wheedled, getting up and reaching for Remus's trunk. We want to see you in your nice shiny badge. No! Remus snapped, glaring at Sirius. Thank goodness it was still easy to get annoyed with him. He raised his eyebrows, so that Lily couldn't see, and said very pointedly, Silver isn't my colour. Sirius's eyes widened immediately in realization. Remus raised his eyebrows again and followed Lily out. He glanced back through the glass door just in time to see James quickly removing his own pin. Being a prefect was as bad as Remus had expected. The letter had come as much as a surprise to him as to everyone else. The pin fell out of his usual Hogwarts reading list and into his lap one summer morning. He'd hissed in pain as the silver burnt his fingers and dropped it to the floor. Grant picked it up. What the bloody hell is this?
I'm a prefect,
Remus said, not believing it himself. A what? Jesus, sometimes I think I've made you up.
You don't know the half of it, Remus had groaned. My friends are never going to let me live this down.
Ha! Good. Grant stuck out his pink tongue. Remus just shook his head again and resolved to write a letter to Dumbledore about this, demanding that someone else be given the job. James would be good. Even Peter would be better than Remus. Dumbledore had not responded. He tried McGonagall, who did respond, simply saying that the decision was final. Remus decided to try again once term started. On the train, Lily and Remus had to attend an extremely tiresome meeting with all the other prefects, led by the interminably boring head boy and girl. After that, they were expected to patrol the corridors, stopping anyone from having any fun. Unfortunately, Lily took this duty very seriously, and Remus got the feeling it was going to be a very long year. Still, it was much preferable to be sitting in a confined space with Sirius. He would have to do his best to steer clear for a while, until he'd worked out his latest revelation. The feast was okay. It was less merry than the previous years. Remus didn't know if this was his own turmoil, or the pallor of the war. There were less students than usual, only a handful of first years. No one was mentioning it. After dinner, Lily made Remus patrol again, and he actually didn't mind. He hoped that if he could stay away long enough, the others would be in bed. Then he wouldn't have to see them until lessons the next morning, if Sirius and James had left early for Quidditch practice. You're still not wearing your pin, Lily said, as they walked the length of the 4th floor hall.
Yeah, sorry, Remus yawned. I'll find it tomorrow, promise.
So, how was summer?
Yeah, great.
Remus grinned wider than he meant to. Lily smiled back at him, looking genuinely pleased. Oh, that's lovely. What did you do?
Oh, nothing. Lots of homework.
Weirdo. Lily elbowed him, laughing. Even I don't like homework that much. He was right. By the time he got back to the common room, everyone had gone to bed, and the marauder's bedroom was dark and quiet. He padded quietly into the bathroom, brushed his teeth and pulled on his pyjamas, then crept over to his bed, drawing the curtains tight. It felt as though he had only just relaxed properly when he heard Sirius get out of bed. He knew each of his roommates by their footsteps now. He used to like knowing it.
Now it felt like a peculiar kind of torture, as Sirius drew closer, and hissed, "Moony, psst, oi, even you don't fall asleep that easily." Remus groaned, crawled over to the edge of the bed, and opened the curtains. "What?" "Oh, come on, why are you avoiding us? Is it the prefect thing? You know we're just teasing. Lighten up. Here, I've got something for you." He opened his hand. In the dark, Remus leaned over and saw his red and silver prefect pin. He frowned. "Is this a joke?" "No, take it. Trust me, Remus." Sirius caught his eye, and Remus's mind went completely blank. He accepted the pin, waited, and felt nothing. He blinked and looked down. "What?" "Transfigured it." Sirius smiled, looking thrilled. His teeth gleamed in the dark. "It's tin now. Did the same to James's. I reckon I can get Mary to pinch Evans's too, and I'll do that. You'll be spending loads of time with her, so might as well." "Thank you." "Don't be silly." Sirius shook his head, still smiling, eyes soft. "Anything for our Moony. Good night." He turned and crept back to his own bed. Sirius fell back into his own pillows, exhaling heavily, still clutching the pin so tight it bit into his palm. He flung the covers over his head and willed his heart to stop pounding. "Oh God," he thought grimly. "I fancy Sirius black." Chapter 74, 5th Year. Pain. Remus overslept the next morning, and would have missed breakfast if Peter hadn't shouted his name about 100 times before leaving himself. As the door slammed, Remus rolled onto his back and stared at a chink of light coming through his curtains. He had slept badly, and resigned himself to sleeping badly every night until he got his ridiculous Sirius thing out of his system. The first thing to do was stop thinking about it, he told himself sternly, jumping out of bed and heading straight for the shower, cold as he could stand it. James and Sirius must have left early for Quidditch. A memory of Sirius in his scarlet robes surfaced, hair pulled back, face glistening, that energetic, competitive glint in his eyes. Remus groaned and turned the shower knob all the way down from lukewarm to icy. He forced himself to think about something else, charms or arithmancy or history. Yes, he found that listing off the names of the generals involved in each side of the Great Goblin Revolt of 1642 seemed to calm him down a bit. Gave him something to focus on anyway. You couldn't have lustful thoughts with names like Krebshunk and Fripp the Disemboweler running through your head. He dressed and headed down for breakfast. Their first lesson was Transfiguration, and you could never get away with being late for McGonagall. In the Great Hall, Peter was sitting at the Ravenclaw table with Desdemona, and they were clearly getting reacquainted after a very long summer apart. Remus sighed a little, inwardly, remembering how that felt. It was even worse to watch other couples snogging when you knew what you were missing. James and Sirius were at the Gryffindor table, both dressed in their school uniform, but decidedly rumpled from practice. Their body language was very out of character. Sirius was turned away from James, nose in the air. James looked furtive and wound up. If Remus didn't know better, he'd have thought they were in the middle of a row. As he sat down opposite his two friends, he found that his first impression had been correct. They were sitting in stony silence, and it was clear that Sirius was being very stubborn about something. "Morning," Remus said tentatively, reaching for some toast and jam. "Morning, your prefectness," Sirius replied, with a half-smile. He was pouring spoonful after spoonful of brown sugar into his porridge. "Hiya, Moony," James said, glancing over at him briefly before turning back to Sirius. He looked worn out, stressed. It didn't suit him. "Sirius," he said, very seriously. Sirius ignored him. "Sirius!" James repeated louder. "Not now, Potter. I'm busy." "You're playing with your breakfast." James wrinkled his nose. "And please don't eat that. My teeth hurt just looking at it." Remus thought it looked good, actually. He liked very sweet things,
especially when he was in a bad mood. He kept this opinion to himself. Best not to get involved where James and Sirius were concerned. Sirius finished pouring his last teaspoon of sugar, stirring it vigorously until the mixture had turned the texture and the colour to sand. He scooped up a heaped spoonful, then, making eye contact with James the whole time, shoved it in his mouth and chewed. Remus could hear the grains of sugar crunching between his teeth. James shook his head. "You don't have to be like that. I'm not Regulus," he said grumpily. Sirius growled at him, then stood up. "Got to go to the library," he said, his mouth still full of oversweet porridge. "See you in Transfiguration." James sighed heavily, watching Sirius leave. Remus breathed a small sigh of relief, but felt immediately guilty about it. There was obviously something wrong with his friend, and he ought to be as concerned as James. "What's up?" he asked, hoping he sounded calm and caring. "See him limping?" James said, still watching Sirius walk out of the hall. Remus looked. He had the same arrogant swagger as usual, his hair swishing and his shoulders back, but yes, Remus thought James was right. He looked a little unsteady on his feet. "Something happened at practice?" Remus frowned. "No," James shook his head. "Been like that since yesterday." Remus thought back, scanning his memories. Sirius had been sitting down most of the time Remus had seen him, and even then, Remus hadn't exactly been looking in great detail. In fact, he had been trying to do the complete opposite. His guilt took on a new dimension. "Do you think his mum did something?" he asked, his stomach churning. "I know she did," James replied fiercely. He was looking at the Slytherin table now. "He tried to hide it in the changing rooms, but I caught him in the showers and... Merlin, Moony, if you saw..." "What?" James shook his head, as if he wished he could shake out the image. "She's butchered him." A chill ran through Remus that was 10 times more effective than a cold shower. All of a sudden he was 11 again, and back in the Quidditch changing rooms after he and Sirius had crashed their brooms. 11-year-old Sirius whispered, "I've got scars," and lifted his trouser leg to show the one straight silver mark. At the time, Remus had thought how different they were from his own scars, how neat and uniform, as if they had been done with a razor blade. Later, Sirius had described the scars as a disciplinary technique, and they had never discussed it again. "Is he okay?" Remus asked, shakily, no longer wanting his toast. "He says he is," James replied, "but he won't talk about it or say anything. Ugh, I shouldn't have brought up Regulus like that. He's just so bloody stubborn." "What can we do?" Remus worried. "He can't go back there. It's not right. Can your family do something?" "They tried last summer," James said sadly, "but no joy. If I can get him to go to someone, Dumbledore or even Madame Pomfrey, if they could see what that old bitch does, maybe we can get him out." "He won't, though," Remus sighed. Sirius would never show weakness like that. "Can you try, Moony?" James asked desperately. "He won't talk to me, but sometimes you can sort of shock him into it." "Me?" "Yeah, you know, I think he listens to you sometimes. He always wants to impress you." Oh, why did James have to say a thing like that? They went to Transfiguration and found Sirius already there, studiously ignoring them. It was the same story for the rest of the day. Even at lunchtime, Sirius engaged Mary and Marlene in conversation before James or Remus could get a word in. He kept them entertained with silly impressions of Peter and Desdemona, so that they were hysterical with laughter. James sat by, grim-faced, his expression not flickering once. They weren't able to trap Sirius alone until well after dinner. Peter was once again conspicuously absent, and Remus found that he and Lily were off the rota for patrol that evening. They caught Sirius exiting the bathroom, and James stood in front of the door so that he couldn't escape into the common room. Remus decided to go for the direct approach. "Heard you had a shit summer,"
he said, looking Sirius in the eye. It was easier if you were ready for it. Sirius snorted. What's James been saying? That you're hurt, but you're too much of a stuck-up git to admit it. I'm not hurt, Sirius growled, disgusted. It's healing. This morning you were bleeding, James said angrily, clearly at his wit's end. What? Remus said, alarmed. God, Sirius, you have to go to Madame Pomfrey. And have the whole school know how my mother likes to amuse herself? No thanks. Yeah, because Madame Pomfrey tells the whole school everything, Remus said, raising a sarcastic eyebrow. Let me see. No, Godric, you're worse than Potter. Come on, I've showed you mine. Remus caught his eye again and held it. He saw Sirius calculating, weighing up the benefits, then slowly relating. I don't want James to see, he said, looking down embarrassed. Remus turned and looked at James, whose shoulders slumped a bit with disappointment. Still, stoic as ever, he nodded and promptly left the room. Remus felt very vulnerable now, being alone with Sirius. He pushed all selfish thoughts aside and tried to concentrate on helping his best friend. Come on then, he nodded at Sirius. Let's see, one victim to another. He had meant that as a bit of a dark joke, but realised at once it'd been the wrong thing to say. He cursed himself and resolved to shut up unless he had something helpful to say. Sirius sat on the nearest bed, which happened to be Remus's, and pulled up his trouser leg. Remus had to hold back a gasp of horror. James had used exactly the right word, butchered. These marks were not neat and ordered, as the earlier scars had been. They were vicious, crisscrossed, varying in depth and severity. The entire backs of his calves looked as though someone had sliced at them with a surgeon's scalpel. Lucero? Remus asked, trying to keep his face blank. Sirius flinched slightly at the word, but nodded. Bitch, Remus said. Sirius laughed. Goes all the way up, he said. Shit, Remus breathed. He backed away, then went to his bedside table to rummage around. I've got something that'll stop it hurting. It doesn't, don't lie, Remus commanded, pulling out his jar of murtlap essence. I know pain. Sirius accepted this. Remus returned and handed him the jar. Sirius looked at it, then at Remus, expectantly. You rub it on, Remus said. He shook the jar impatiently. Come on, I'm not doing it for you. I'm not your house elf. He thought he'd been doing pretty well, but it would all come crumbling down if he had to touch Sirius, even somewhere as innocent as his calves. Sirius grinned and took the murtlap essence. He scooped out a liberal dollop on his long fingers and smeared some onto his leg. Remus saw from the look of his face that it had worked at once. His features relaxed, some of the sharpness left his eyes. He must have really been in pain. Bloody hell, you're amazing, Moony, Sirius said, cheering up as he continued to apply the essence. Remus blushed and shrugged. It's just magic. It's not like I discovered the stuff. Yeah, but still. Sirius stood up now and began to unbutton his trousers so that he could do the rest of his cuts. Remus practically leapt back and scrambled towards the door, blabbing. I'll give you some privacy. Got to go anyway. Homework. His voice was much higher than he wanted it to be. He practically ran down the stairs and bumped straight into James. Is he okay? Yeah. I gave him something for it. Just give him a minute. I think he'll come down. Brilliant. Thanks, Remus. I didn't talk to him about going to a teacher or anyone. Yeah, but he's talking to us now, James beamed. Seriously, thanks, Moony. You're a legend. We're going to pay you back. I'm not supposed to say anything about it yet, but, well, I promise we're going to. With that, James clapped him on the shoulder, then ran up the stairs to see Sirius. Remus sank down into a nearby armchair and decided to reassess a few things. He had to get away in case they came back down. He left the common room and went to the library, where he spent the rest of the evening painstakingly studying the goblin rebellions,
It was Owls this year after all, and he couldn't allow his libido to wreck everything he'd been working for. It was almost curfew by the time he was ready to leave. His eyes itched and his back ached, and he was in a bad mood. But at least he wasn't thinking about Sirius anymore. Well, not really. He left the library and walked quickly up the dark corridors to the Gryffindor Tower. He was at least halfway there when he heard an odd sort of noise, like a whimper, at the end of the charms hallway. Sighing to himself, he went to investigate. Lily would have his guts for garter if he didn't. It was as he suspected. 2 Slytherins had cornered a Ravenclaw first year and were tormenting him. They had him in a binding curse. Remus had been in that position plenty of times. "Expelliarmus!" he called out, and the 2 Slytherins' wands flew into his hand. They turned, one dark-haired, one fair. Barty Crouch and Regulus Black. "Oh, you two," Remus yawned, leaning casually against the wall. The Ravenclaw scurried off, squeaking a quick "Thank you" to Remus as he did. "Loony Lupin," Barty smirked. He had a horrible smile, as if he had never really known joy or happiness. "Watch your tongue, Crouch," Remus hissed, then shot a curse at him. At once, Barty's tongue began to swell up, turning purple as it did so. He clutched at it desperately, but it was one of James's engorgement charms and could not be stopped. "Better get to the hospital wing," Remus smiled pleasantly. "I'll send your wands to the head of house. Let him know you're out of bounds." "How dare you!" Regulus seethed, marching over to Remus. He was much shorter, almost the same height as Sirius, but it didn't stop him squaring up to the 5th year. The summer had clearly treated Regulus poorly too. He was paler than ever, his eyes dark and hollow. "Filthy half-blood scum! You might be a prefect, but you're still just a cowardly, dirty cowardly, am I?" Remus saw red and dropped both wands, instead using his hands to ram Regulus up the wall by his neck. The younger boy's head hit the brick wall, and he blinked, genuine terror showing in his face. Remus didn't care. In fact, it was perfect. "I may be a half-blood," Remus hissed menacingly, "but at least I don't stand by and watch my family get cut to shreds." Regulus's eyes widened, and a terrible haunted look came over him. I told him to stop pushing her, but he wouldn't listen," he whimpered. "I couldn't stop her." Disgusted, Remus let go. Barty was still choking further down the hall. "You're a coward, Regulus Black," Remus said very quietly. "Don't ever forget it." He spat at Regulus's feet and walked away. End of chapter 74.